Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Shan and Ryan, as the latest chapter in the Merseyside Derby has been written, and the misery for both Everton and David Moyes continued at Anfield with a 2-1 loss to the red half of the city, half being probably a little bit generous. The summary quote of the day, I went with Win Freaky 12 from our Discord. Moyes got the tactics wrong at first, shouldn't have pressed so much early. Center backs and midfielders not convincing in Liverpool's goals. Showed more in the second half. Gana goal was very nice. Wish the subs would have been earlier. Thankfully, we don't judge the season by how we play Liverpool at Anfield, but I hope Moyes learned from our issues in this first half. I think that's going to set the tone for this episode very nicely. Before we get into it, just a reminder, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you listen on those platforms. Follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads, and join our Discord. And last but not least, we now have, as of a few days ago, we've got a merch store. We've got merch, so if you want to support the show and help us grow it, you can check that out, the link in the description. With that, we go to score predictions, a remarkably high number of correct score predictions today.
Yeah, as you said, James, just a lot of score predictions. I don't even want to call it the pessimism train, but I think there were some folks that just felt like a 2-1 scoreline for Liverpool was proper. And so we'll start with Zach Landy, BCG Rose, TJ Barrow, who actually gets 2 points this week because he did predict Ghana as the scorer, so good job, TJ. Harper Short Canvas, Willie Tiger, Sunwave Cat, Mike Kennedy, Rhetoric, Chill O'Neill, Nick Weinstein, It's James, Not James, Joe5494, and Cryptus. So getting into the lineups for the Reds, I think really the big thing that stood out to me was Florian Wirtz essentially getting benched. Think his start to life in the Premier League has been criticized pretty high just because he hasn't really set the world on fire. Also, I think one notable, Jeremy Frimpong still seems to be recovering from an injury, which I think benefits us, and that has Conor Bradley playing a lot more than he would. Of course, that midfield gets a boost by putting Soboslai back there because he's not playing out of position. And of course, Gravenberch, who's just had a really good start to the season, along with Alexis McAllister in the midfield. I mean, that back line, I still think is just an opportunity to attack, right? I mean, Virgil and Konate just do not, set the world on fire for me. And then, of course, Milos Kerkez, who came from Bournemouth, I still think he's very suspect in his defensive ability. Of course, on the attack, he's somebody to watch out for. And I think Hugo Ékitike, of course, has had a really good start to the season, probably their most impressive kind of starting signing for the guy that they've spent a lot of money for. And then you look at that bench. I mean, that bench is probably more expensive than most Premier League teams, right? So I don't want to hear anything about Liverpool's net spend or, hey, they're saving money or whatnot. They have spent over a ton. I think it's over $500 million this year or this summer. But as we know, anything could happen in a Merseyside derby. And I think for us, it was good to see a left back come in that has a good record against Mohamed Salah. So I'll hand it to you, James, for Everton's lineup.
Yeah, telling that in that lineup rundown, you don't even really mention Mo Salah because of all the other options and firepower that Liverpool have added. But yes, Moyes was playing it very coy in the pre-match press conference, asked about Mykolenko and Jared Branthwaite. He definitely dodged the question. And you see Vitaly Mykolenko return to the side at left back. Otherwise, unchanged. Of course, that moves James Garner into midfield, Tamir Abunam to the bench. But otherwise, pretty moderate or minor changes from Moyes, trying to keep the lineup steady. Beto gets the nod up top. I don't think that was at all surprising. He's given Liverpool issues in recent derbies, made really effective runs in behind, and been a physical challenge for Van Dijk and Konate and their center backs in general. And the bench continues to have depth that we have not been accustomed to in recent years. So reasons for optimism perhaps from Everton, despite the abysmal record at Anfield over the last 2 decades plus. Nevertheless, as we get into the key matchups, you still have some potential challenges for this team.
Just not enough magic on the bench. You've only got a conjurer, not a wizard. Found it a little curious that people are devastated that Roll wasn't in the lineup. I'm like, cut the kid a break. My Lord, he just got here. I think the key matchups, you hit the one, James, for sure. Beto has caused them problems. We know he's a bit of a chaos merchant in a match that could get, in theory, scrappy, ugly, messy. Beto's the type of guy that maybe could benefit for something like that. Certainly didn't play out that way today. And Mykolenko coming back to face up against Mo Salah. He's done pretty well against him. I think the setup today didn't leave them isolated as often as you would have hoped. Some of that was due to Liverpool. Some of that was due to Everton getting stretched out a little bit. And for me, exactly what Shan mentioned, the fullback versus winger matchup. I mean, the highlight of the attack in Everton is certainly Jack Grealish on the left side and Ndiaye on the right side. And you would think those matchups, if Everton could manage to get the ball in position to run 1v1 against those guys, or even a 1v2 to pull a guy over, it at least would get Everton maybe some control over the match that they haven't had in previous matchups versus Liverpool. I think the key is, though, the way we play and the tactics, and I don't think we quite got that right at first. Certainly it seemed like it was being made way too easy for Liverpool, even if it took them a while to kind of break through.
Well, if you count a while as 10 minutes after a pretty dominant start overall, Everton looked a little bit timid. Liverpool were finding a ton of space in the midfield, kind of emphasizing some of those tactical issues you mentioned, Ryan. And it's the first goal from Gravenberch after 10 minutes. It's mostly Liverpool to start the game, Everton not seeing a lot of the ball. It's a good goal. You have to kind of tip your cap. It's Salah playing the curling ball in, and it's a one-time volley over Pickford from Gravenberch. It was the first shot of the game, so it's, again, Liverpool had control, but they weren't creating many opportunities up until this point. I think Pickford got caught a little off guard with this one, to be honest, and I was caught off guard a little bit as well. The way he strikes it, the way it's coming down, you don't really... So many players who could put a shot of that quality past a keeper from that position at that angle. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's just a really good goal, I think, by Gravenberch. Of course, we kind of get caught out with Ndiaye. We think gets fouled, but it just kind of looks like something that would not be overturned. And I think it's just one of those that we saw the limits of just the midfield kind of getting bypassed really quickly. And then, of course, our center back's just a little bit slow to getting to, of course, Ryan Gravenberch. And it's a really good goal, like you said, James. Nothing I think Pickford could do about it. And it's just, unfortunately, I think we've done a pretty good job in past derbies of not conceding that early. And it just kind of gave them, I think, some momentum to really start to put themselves on the front foot.
It was a pretty fortunate shot, honestly. I don't think if he tried that out of 10 times, he probably doesn't pull it off more than once, at least with that sort of precision. But it's hard to ignore, though, how quickly they were just cutting right through our midfield. And in particular, this example, I mean, he's in the box, probably about 12 yards in, not that far from the post, in the half space, and there is not a player within 5 yards of him when the ball first touches him. I mean, you look at that and you're like, sheesh, guys. I mean, that's just not, it's just not good shape and not good defending. But yeah, you got to tip your hat a little bit. And when we say Pickford maybe wasn't quite set and couldn't really get any explosion off the jump, I mean, you got to cut him a break for that one. I don't think many people are going to save it.
Really not. And you can't really put your keeper in that position anyway. You have to defend better. And you look at the numbers through those first 10 minutes. It's the one shot for Liverpool. They had 3/4 of the ball, 3 dribbles to R2, 4 tackles to R1. That would reflect maybe an Everton that are, if you just look at the numbers, sitting a little bit deeper, trying to stay compact. But that was not at all what we saw early on. Everton were really out over their skis trying to press Liverpool, trying to pressure them. And look, it's a derby. Anything can happen. Form goes out the window. All the cliches you want in the world. But this seemed a little bit ambitious for Moyes in a lot of ways when you're playing the reigning champions who have just completely reloaded this summer. Maybe some more pragmatism would have served us better. It's about 12 minutes after that goal that Everton even have their first remotely positive offensive move. And it's a ball in from Idrissa Gana Gueye, who was pushing forward quite a lot throughout the match, to Beto, and we earn our first corner. Nothing really happens from that except for giving Liverpool an opportunity to break the opposite way right after the Szoboszlai blocks Gana's shot. And just a few minutes after that, you have the highlight of Everton's first half or close to it. That Garner play down the touchline to Grealish, who spins the defender, lets the ball run and drives forward. Gets it to Dewsbury Hall in a similar position to where he scored already this season, but he rifles this one over. An opportunity for Everton, a decent one at that, but nothing came of it, unfortunately.
Credit to Jack a little bit for dealing with all the abuse early and adjusting to just decide to kind of dummy him and move around. I mean, Bradley was fouling him repeatedly. We'll get to that a little bit later in the match. I found it curious, this card, this yellow on Ndiaye here in the 28th. I don't understand how that's a yellow at all. It seemed kind of out of nowhere. For the most part, a referee was letting things go in the first half. It was pretty physical at times, not overly so I understand letting it go. But it was just disappointing, too, because at this point, Liverpool were kind of doing whatever the heck they want. And I think this goal here to make it 2-0 by Ékitike was very much illustrative of all of the problems in a first half kind of smashed into one.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This one really took the wind out of our sails, and it starts with Pickford hoofing it long. Dewsbury Hall gets his head on the end of it, but he hits it backwards. It goes right to Szoboszlai. So that completely takes Dewsbury Hall out of the play, leaving an uneven midfield 3v2 matchup. Ghana has to mark Szoboszlai, who passes it to McAllister. Garner gets passed by again. McAllister to Gravenberch. Okay. And then you see Ékitike kind of lurking in between the two center backs. Keane checks his shoulder too late. It's savvy forward play to position yourself that way, but he's well in front of the line, and Mykolenko is not aware of where he is. He's kind of right in front of him. Yeah, keeps him on. And then Tark coming on the backside, too slow to cover and get to him. So Pickford lets it go through him on the shot, but the positioning and the marking and the defensive shape is all wrong leading up to this. On top of that, compounded by the fact that we just hoof it long and give the ball right back to them, which is almost all we did the entire first half.
Yeah, and the hoofball does a couple things too, because the defensive line has to push up quickly after the hoof to set the line. They were not in shape. I just think there's some flaws here because you've got two center backs that are better box defenders. You know what I mean? They're not guys that would push up higher necessarily. Naturally, you got Mykolenko who's just dropping back, and Keane is too high. He's not even with Mykolenko, who's in front of him. But yeah, I mean, the midfield, if it's not Dewsbury Hall missing a header to get bypassed, it's just in the run of play getting bypassed. We'll talk about that here in a second, but yeah, it's just a combination of bad defending, and Pickford's got to do better here, too. I mean, how often has Jordan Pickford ever beat low like this? Almost never. So maybe it's just fluky. We know he's a top player, but disappointing.
Yeah, it just felt like two moments from Liverpool, and it's 2-0. But of course, like you said, Ryan, I think we really were the byproduct of a lot of these mistakes, just because the midfield was getting bypassed too quickly. The defense was just kind of pushed up, and you have two guys that just aren't, high-line defenders. And I think it also, from a game state standpoint, like we know Liverpool are very quick on the counterattack, right? So for us to kind of almost just completely dismiss that, because there were a few other moments where we got very lucky with emergency defending, right, where we pretty much, kept the game at 2-0. And then it kind of gets to a place where we settle down a little bit, and then we get to the 45th minute. Ball cut back to the 18. Ghana gets this on goal, so credit to him for not, essentially hitting it outside of Bramley Moore. But it goes pretty weak at Allison. But the interesting thing is 0.12 XG, 0.32 post shot XG. I don't really understand that one.
He flubbed it with his left.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why some of this like point in time XG and some of the models that are available to us in real time are not good. I mean, look, we get to the half here. Maybe that gives us a little glimmer of hope. But yeah, I think it's just hard. You kind of look at the numbers from about the 10th minute on, and it doesn't necessarily look so bad. But I still think, they're just moving the ball up and down the pitch, I think, with relative ease, even if they're maybe not getting quite to the keeper.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, as you said, Ryan. 5-4 in shots after their first goal. They had 53 roughly % of the ball. They won 8 aerials to our 6, 7 tackles to our 5. We were dispossessed 6 times. We dispossessed them 5 times. Expected goal numbers, they were 0.73. Ours is 0.35. And again, like a third of that is Ghana's shot at the end of the half, which is just not a great opportunity, not great execution. They finished well. I really think it comes down to it. But you look at the possession numbers and whatnot, so much of the game was played in our final third, whether we were just passing, like our possession was predominantly in our final third, just moving it around. And when Liverpool had the ball, they were able to comfortably maintain that sort of high pressure, just containing, keeping our defense pinned back.
And the thing is, I don't mind some of the long ball stuff, but the long balls were just awful. They weren't anywhere near Beto. I mean, Beto really never got an opportunity to cause the chaos. He wasn't good in transition. He had some bad touches, but fundamentally, if you're not giving him even a chance to come down with it, a couple times where it got around him, where he won an aerial or they won the aerial and created at least a throw-in or something, allowed us to advance up the pitch a little bit. And that's, I think, a bit of it, too. In long balls, we were 14 of 36. I mean, that's not great, but I think part of the issue is like Ghana was 3 for 4, which is funny. Pickford 8 of 27, and our whole back line was a combined 7 for 22. And that's just not, it's not a good decision to let the thing fly in the first half when you're not getting anything out of it. I think what was also really disappointing is, I mean, Liverpool was at 88% passing for the half. They were only dispossessed 5 times, yet they had the predominant amount of possession. Everton only had 3 interceptions in the first half. I mean, to me, that speaks right there in the passing rate. And Liverpool's not a tiki-taka team. They're playing vertically. And, I mean, Dewsbury Hall was dispossessed 4 times by himself in the first half. Liverpool only dispossessed as a team 5 times. Something has to change there. It was simply too easy for Liverpool, in my opinion. And I think a lot of that is tactical. I think Moyes got it wrong in a couple different ways. Number one, he's bringing Dewsbury Hall out to pressure center backs that I don't think are that dangerous with the ball. Yes, at one point in time, Virgil van Dijk was. But I would rather have Liverpool with the ball in possession with the 2 center backs at midfield with less of a field to defend rather than moving forward in transition. Shan said, I mean, they are really dangerous moving up and down the pitch. They very much are. And yes, you run the risk with that midfield. They have a bunch of guys that are good on the ball. But you also deal with the fact that you've got 2 box defenders. You've got a right back that's a defensive right back and a defensive left back. Why are you trying to play in transition and push up higher to pressure them? So, yeah, just too often Dewsbury Hall was easily bypassed by the center backs, and it just created 3v2s in the middle, and they would just cut right through us. And it did seem like Ghana and Garner were a step slow, but I think because they were being asked to pressure and push up and play man concepts, you know, they were just a little too aggressive. Obviously, something had to change, though, going into the second half.
Something certainly did, and that was, of course, David Moyes yanking off Beto in favor of Thierno Barry for the second half. There was a lot of frustration at Beto's performance in the first half, and I think a lot of people were excited to see Thierno Barry come on in the derby. Beto was not great. I will not say he was phenomenal. He struggled a little bit. You didn't see the same type of chaos merchant behavior that Ryan alluded to that we know he's capable of, but it also just didn't really have the intense, chaotic feel that you would expect from a derby. I think Liverpool were pretty composed, and we were not bringing the level of intensity or weren't able to, from our tactical approach, disrupt them enough to really bring any sort of chaos to the game. So Beto struggled. He only got 11 touches. Nothing crazy. He was 2 for 4 in aerials. He was 2 for 5 in passes. He had 1 shot that was off target. But he had a few bad touches and just looked like the poorer version of Beto that we know we see from time to time.
I wish we were less intense at times chasing after them. You know, I think that was part of the issue. I mean, is this really about Beto? I mean, to me, it seems like it's about the tactics and, you know, pushing up O'Brien for long passes. Look, if the hoofball's not working, you have to stop it. And I think Moyes conscientiously did that. But yeah, I really think this is more structural, really. I mean, when you've got that extra midfield in there being pulled out and creating numerical advantages in the middle of the pitch, it's just recipe for disaster. And I think regardless of the sub at center forward, I think it's good that Moyes changed and dropped Dewsbury Hall a little bit more. And I think it was very obvious that Dewsbury Hall, when he did pressure, was checking his shoulder repeatedly, making sure that when he came out, he had the guys behind him and the structure, whereas he could pressure a little bit. And maybe Barry did help forcing the center backs kind of stay at one half a little bit. I will say this. Barry is a little quicker than Beto, so it's not unreasonable to suggest that although Beto's fast straight ahead, he's not necessarily that agile and that quick. So if you are going to set up a pressing team, maybe Barry is a little bit better choice. You get a little different out of those guys, but either way. I wouldn't say we started off with a bang or anything, but eventually we finally had the moment that got us back into the game.
Yeah, in the 57th minute, Jack Grealish gets space, and this is just such a great movement. England to Senegal to Senegal. Cross to Ndiaye, who lays it off really well. And Ghana, I mean, this is an insane finish, I think, just given the circumstances. Pitch wasn't the greatest, right, just given all the rain and whatnot. So I give Ghana all the credit in the world. And this is just, it's a really good momentum kind of shifter for us because I think, like Ryan said, came out of the half, I think just a little bit more on edge, a little bit more appetite. And you could see Liverpool start to just kind of be a little bit worse with their passing and whatnot. They didn't have as much room as they did before. And I think for us, it's a really good goal. And I believe this is the first goal we scored at Anfield in some time. So it gives us, I think, good momentum going on and game on for us. So credit to the team for fighting back.
Yeah, and I think the move really starts with Ghana deflecting a pass against McAllister, and Garner picks it up. Barry dropping into the midfield. And this is a layoff that I think he gets some credit for. It's a really good one back to Ghana, and then finding Grealish in that space. Grealish doing what he was trying to do all game when he wasn't being viciously hacked down at every opportunity. It's a really phenomenal goal. And the lifeline that Everton needed to just give the team an opportunity for a result, because it felt very, very just dead in the water at the halftime for sure. So the performance was tightened up a little bit in those early stages of the second half. You get the goal, you're performing a little bit better, you introduce some nerves to the home crowd and maybe give yourselves a platform to push for more.
I think it makes a big difference. I mean, I think the center backs lacked patience on Liverpool. I think they got maybe a little bit rattled. A lot of the things that were working for them in the first half, they weren't even really trying. You could tell. Now, maybe you could argue game state, but I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I love Barry's shove on Kirkes, by the way, on that play, too. Kind of hilarious. Yeah, and I think eventually Liverpool op. I think the big one is the sub, Isak on for Ékitike. And I mean, we could talk about the monetary exchanges of the subs that they made in this match is kind of ridiculous. But before that, ultimately, like almost right after the goal, Curtis Jones and Wirtz came in. And I don't know if this really made much of a difference. I mean, I think they probably looked at the match and said, if we had a player that could play a little bit more in between the lines, which was open a lot in the first half, Wirtz is that guy, and I think it would have helped a lot. McAllister, I don't think, is fully fit as well, too. And Jones is pretty good on the ball, so I think that's a fairly even exchange. But I don't think either team really created a whole lot after this point regardless.
Yeah, that frustrated me because you get the opportunity, you get into the game, it's there for the taking. You have nothing to lose, really, if you're Everton. The record is well established, how poor we've been at Anfield. This is the best opportunity in a while to take a point.
It's tricky, though, James, right? Because you don't want to start being too aggressive because that's playing into them a little bit. Like when Wirtz had that break when the box, Tarks comes over to make a great play to clear for the corner. Like, those are the types of plays that you're going to sacrifice. But you got to go after it a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're always kind of on a knife's edge of, okay, well, if you concede another one, that's it. So you don't want to get too aggressive. But I just didn't feel like we really put enough pressure on them, even though we had more of a foothold in terms of possession, in terms of controlling. I think part of that's also just Liverpool with the lead, defending the lead, being a little more pragmatic.
I mean, keep in mind, you play to win the game. So I think in many ways, yeah, I think you got to come out a little bit. We're going to talk about this yellow card that Dewsbury Hall gets in the 77th. I mean, have you guys ever seen? It's a long time. I don't ever remember. I must have seen it at some point where we play the ball quickly. It's the second time we play the ball quickly, and he blows the whistle on us. Yet Allison could take forever on the ball. I don't get this. It really seemed like he gave the yellow immediately from playing the ball. I don't think there was time for dissent or anything, right? Am I wrong? I mean, have you guys ever... This seemed really ridiculous.
I've never seen that, really. It seemed absurd at the time. I do wonder, because Darren England was calling a lot of free kicks back for us that we were trying to take quickly and really allowing Liverpool to kind of get back and settle, and clearly we were trying to move the ball quickly. So I wonder if there was some sort of warning issued about, hey, you've got to let the play get set, you've got to give it some time. That still seems absurd to me and really punitive towards Everton, which is unfair. But the immediate yellow for Dewsbury Hall, again, now you have to play the last 15 minutes with him on a yellow, which is a little bit dangerous. It was an impactful moment in the game.
I think Darren England got it confused with the 8-second rule with the keeper versus Dewsbury Hall. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Dewsbury Hall seems like one of the nicer guys to play the game, so I doubt he was saying anything colorful, unlike maybe Jack would, and of course Jack was very boisterous throughout the game, as he should have been, because, Conor Bradley was able to essentially have his, the four. Conor Bradley essentially was able to hack his way into just getting into his skin. But I will say this, I will credit Liverpool with some of the defending on the crosses, because I thought we put in some really good balls to Jake, and they had some good emergency defending where I would have been interested to see if Jake on the end of a few of those, because they were actually really good crosses into him. But like you said, James, Ryan, it's disappointing, and I think from Moyes' standpoint, why not put some of these subs in, at the 75th minute or the 70th minute? I mean, you have nothing to lose. You play to tie the game at this point. And for us, it just felt like we weren't even, we were just trying to kind of survive until maybe trying to get a moment of magic, and it just never came.
I mean, I'm trying to fight my urge to start going with NFL coach tirades, But I mean, we knew who they were, who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. They didn't do diddly poo in the second half. No, yeah, I would have liked to see an earlier sub. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There's this moment right after that, too, where Jack wins the free kick off Bradley. Finally, they call a foul. Bradley had 4 fouls of their 11 fouls. It was very obvious that was not a good matchup for them. Bradley's a talented young player. I mean, he's strong. He has some potential, but Jack's tough to deal with. There's a reason why they double team constantly. I wish we had a little more of a game plan for that. But we get nothing off the free kick, really. It takes until the 85th minute to sub on Charlie and Dibbling for Ndiaye and Mykolenko. Can we talk about this one for a second? I'm curious your all thoughts on this one. I thought this was a little bit strange.
To me, and we'll talk about it later, it is just so disappointing how Kieran Dewsbury Hall just cannot be subbed. Because to me, Ndiaye was the absolute threat of the game. He was moving, like a guy on skates throughout the match, but this is somebody that you want in the middle of the pitch at this point, I think, just to give us a threat. And I don't mind the subs, of course, Charlie and Dibbling coming on, but the idea of essentially your biggest threat to come off, to me, is a bit asinine for Moyes. And it just is odd that he is kind of the one to always have to be the sacrificial lamb when it comes to the front three.
Is Dewsbury Hall on basically for set pieces at this point because of the left foot? I mean, I guess I could understand that a little bit, but Garner goes back to left back. Just the lack of, Dibbling playing right, you're thinking, sweet, now we can put Ndiaye in the middle. He can really start to go after guys. Maybe he assumed that they'd bunker in more and enough of that transition play wouldn't be there, but Ndiaye's the guy I want when they're bunkering in to receive with his back to goal in the half space and just attack,
Agreed. And I think the Mykolenko coming off makes total sense, right? He's just back from injury. You want to but to wait till the 85th minute, if the minute, you want to give him a run out, maybe you play him 60, 70, and then you pull him at that point, and then you're willingly pushing Garner back to left back. There's a lot of options Moyes has here. Like you said, Ryan, he could put Ndiaye in the middle. You could put Ndiaye left, move Grealish to the middle, even potentially. I know that's maybe not the most ideal thing, but there's attacking options on this team now, and it just felt like a really bizarre move from Moyes. Both, the personnel coming on, it was all in favor of Charlie, but you got to give them a little bit of time to get up to speed on the game to impact it. To leave them only 5 minutes plus stoppage is just not enough, really, for me.
I'm sure he thinks Asnu isn't ready, but I like that left foot and the ability to tack out wide instead of putting Garner over there to cut through in the half space. It's not the worst idea in the world. I got it, but Dewsbury Hall dropping back makes sense. You need a goal. You've got a guy that's on the ball. Maybe if Merlin was there, that's who you go to at that point. But it's all too late. Now, that being said, he probably wasn't really prepared for only 3 minutes of stoppage time. We going to talk about that one? Look, I'm not doubting that there weren't a ton of stoppages, but there were a couple series of subs and a goal. It does seem a little irregular compared to all the other matches that we've watched. And it's not like he tacks on a ton, even though you had Garner go down for a while because he had cramps. Jack gets a yellow, too, at the end here for, I guess, arguing or dissent. Really, there's not a great chance here at the end, I would say. Grealish swinging it over to the far post to Jake when he headed out for a corner. You're thinking, oh, maybe. And then we run that corner play where it kind of goes back corner somewhat to Jack. He tries to volley. It goes over. That's a pretty tough play to execute. Jack's got quality, of course, maybe. I don't know. Looking back on it, I'm not. It does stand out a little bit. It's a little odd. I love Jack's comments at the end, though. I kind of also wanted to say, hey, man, like, welcome to the Merseyside Derby playing against Liverpool at Anfield. I mean, it shouldn't be really surprising to you. I'm curious what you guys think about the referees, and then we'll get into Jack's comments. Or maybe we'll hit Jack's comments first, actually. Let's do that. His lines were against TNT. Made a comment about the tactics. We'll save that one. But he said, I've never seen a player in my whole life get booked for taking a quick kick. Even a stoppage time, 3 minutes plus 1 minute. I've never seen that in the Premier League in the last few years. Sometimes, you know, he made a point. Sometimes you want to let the game go a little bit. I completely get that, he says. But you can't not give something for us and then 2 seconds later one of their defenders go down and you call something. And while I don't think that necessarily made a difference in the game, it was a 2-1 match. I mean, a little thing either way could have made a big difference in a game that didn't have a ton of clear-cut chances.
Yeah, in regards to Darren England, his record when it comes to reffing Everton is pretty decent. So, you know, you come in with optimism that it's just not going to be completely corrupt. And then I don't know if something infected him on the way to the stadium, but he just was completely asleep at the wheel for so much of the match. And I think that yellow is pretty indefensible when you look at it. The 3 minutes of stoppage time, I mean, if Liverpool were tied or down, do we think it would be 3 minutes? I think somebody put it on X, but essentially the stoppage time numbers have not been near 3 for a long time, right? So for them to be up and then, of course, you know, get that is really disappointing. But as a whole, there was a lot that we could have done right, I think, better today. You know, you ignore all of that. There's a lot that we could have done better today that we could have controlled.
And Jack opened with that, too. I mean, it's not fair to characterize him just complaining about the referees. He said if we could have pressed like that from the start. And he's right. I mean, Everton were disjointed from the start. They were stretched out. It was very obvious, I think, too, to most. A lot of the issues started for the top of the press, for sure. It exposed the limitations of the back line as well as the fact that Everton don't really have a disciplined defensive midfielder in there. You've got two somewhat center mids. Gana's kind of a fake defensive mid, more of a ball winner that you'd want to have a different pairing with him. And that's what happens, especially when your concepts are very similar to how we've played almost the entire year. You know, those guys pressing up in man, Jake O'Brien pressing up higher at times, you know, for the long balls. And I don't know. I think that's a challenging shape and a challenging thing to pull off against a team that wants to play in transition. Looking at the full-time numbers, it's a 2-1 match, but it really didn't feel like there were chances all over the place. And there have been lots of matches in the past at Anfield where Pickford had to stand on his head. I don't think he came up that big today, unfortunately. I think he saves the one against Ékitike. Maybe this is a different match. Again, he's a great player. Things happen. It's tough as a keeper. But, I mean, none of these numbers really stand out too much for me as something that's, you know, Liverpool slaughtered us, even if the balance of play very much in the first half at times seemed like we were hopeless.
Agreed. This very much reads like a 2-1 game that was relatively close, barring the fact, like, Liverpool 0.94 XG. They get 2 goals off of that. Okay. Good finishing combined with maybe subpar defending and goalkeeping. Everton 0.6. We just did not really create enough. But we did create 9 shots at the end of the day, only 2 of those on target. Liverpool had 11 shots, 3 on target, and they scored 2 of them. I mean, it's just one of those things. Other than that, to your point, Ryan, I mean, we've hit on the touches in the opposition box as a proxy for sort of attacking pressure. I mean, Everton did manage 22 touches in their box. Liverpool only had 26 in ours, but I imagine most of ours came probably toward the later stages, definitely in the second half. Otherwise, cross completion numbers pretty terrible for both teams, as were long balls. Nothing really to write home about.
No, and I think to me, some of the stories of the second half, it was definitely a tale of two halves. And I think Everton were much better in the second half, more together, didn't give up as much, even if they didn't create a whole lot. I mean, Everton were only dispossessed 2 times in the second half. Salah was dispossessed 4 times by himself. 7 interceptions for Everton, 2 to 5 to Liverpool. I think that's also a story of the match. And you think about our goal started with a deflection from Ghana playing behind a midfielder, not too high over the top, and Garner scooping up the ball and really starting the break. And I think had we seen a little more of that in the first half, maybe things change a little bit. I think some people may point to game state a little bit in terms of us getting back into the match. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but it certainly helped their defensive aspects too. When they don't feel like they have to push up those fullbacks, it's a lot easier to defend, and thus they didn't concede a ton. We didn't create a lot as a result.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I also think you just look at Liverpool's performances this season. They've obviously had to do a lot of their goal scoring late. They've conceded leads pretty regularly, so I think probably Slot was making a point to really shore things up defensively when you have that comfortable lead. And they still weren't able to do it, and I think Everton deserve credit for breaking through it, even if it didn't result in any points.
Yeah, we'll talk about the subs a little bit too and the impact it might have had or did not have, because maybe there was opportunity to really tie that thing up, even if we didn't generate a whole lot, and why that didn't happen. There were some good performances. I don't know if there was one clear standout personally.
Yeah, for me, I went with Ghana. I really tried to, go with James Garner, but just didn't merit it today. And that's not to say he played horribly. It's just one of those where we had some better performers. Of course, a goal, which was really, really nice. As we've talked about, 3 for 4 in long balls, which I thought was an interesting stat. 2 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 block shot, about 80% pass accuracy. I think for someone that just was kind of really pushed forward in the first half, I think was a massive reason why in the second half just felt much more balanced, that Moyes set him up for success. I think the personnel around him, and of course, scores the goal, big part of just kind of creating that goal from the first place. And of course, just a very thankless contributor across the board. And so, yeah, glad to see him get a goal. And for us, just a good performance overall.
I went with Ndiaye. We talked about his impact a little bit. I mean, the numbers are kind of staggering. 8 for 12 in dribbles is ridiculous. He was 1 for 2 in crosses, had a couple tackles, 9 recoveries. He also drew 3 fouls and committed 3 fouls. The thing for me with Ndiaye is a lot of those dribbles were in like our own half or just over the halfway line, and he only got 2 touches in Liverpool's box. So he did what he can when he gets the ball, and we absolutely know what a talented player he is and what he's capable of, but it just feels like with him on the right, especially today, he's not getting involved in the areas where we really need him to be such a focal point for our attack and really be the type. I mean, everything goes through Grealish when we move forward, and Ndiaye is left doing a lot of the dirty work, I think. And to me, that's just not the right balance that Everton need to strike.
It's one thing if he's off the ball, great movement, and can cut in with his left and finish something from Grealish, but that's not really his game. Didn't have a shot today. I think last match's first shot was in extra time, injury time, so... yeah, I mean, he's important in transitioning the ball up the pitch. I mean, he's certainly dangerous, but we've said this before. He's not as dangerous off the right. I think the whole right side is suffering a little bit. I think if he at least could get and play in the half space a little bit where there's somewhat of a goal threat, maybe it's a little bit different. But there's not that either. Jake's over there, too. He's kind of playing a little bit higher, a little bit deeper. So, and my choice in terms of good performance, Jack Grealish was good, maybe not great. I mean, he led the match in chances with 3 for 0.1 expected assist number, 2 for 5 in crosses, but he was fouled 6 times, only 1 shot, only dispossessed 1 time. But I will say this, I mean, he creates a matchup problem, and he does allow us to get out from our own end a little bit. So in the past where we would have been bunkered in for so long, there wasn't much we could do about it. I think from about the moment he turned Bradley in the first half to the rest of the way, I think Bradley realized pretty quickly that, I can keep fouling this guy, but I'm playing a dangerous game, and had to back off a little bit. I don't understand how someone commits that many fouls and doesn't get a yellow card, not to mention how many times he fouled him and was not called for a foul. I think that's probably the more disappointing aspect of it. If he calls a few more of those, now Grealish has a much even better game, and we're getting on set pieces, and maybe it makes a difference. Some interesting listening comments and talking points throughout this one. I think one that was discussed a lot was the merits of Beto versus Barry. And I'm kind of curious everyone's thoughts here. They both had very different impacts on the match, but I don't know if I could point to either one of them really making much of a difference at all. I mean, Barry obviously was important in the build-up for the goal, although I think Beto's pretty good at one-touch layoff stuff on the ground as well. Different factors. I mean, Konate was 6 for 6 in aerials in the second half. I think Barry was 0 for 7 in aerials overall, but that's not where you're going to get necessarily with him, even though he's not small. I think that Beto was 2 of 4. I don't think that has really much to do with Barry or Beto, though. I just think the long balls were terrible. And, I mean, you can't expect someone to chase one down for 20 yards off. I think the big difference is Beto had 3 turnovers. Barry only had 1. Barry was 6 for 6 in passing. Beto was 2 for 5. I think they were just trying to do different things. And I think Barry dropping back and keeping a little better shape, maybe that was a byproduct of the tactics itself, was maybe a little bit more effective. But why do you think people are so obsessed with this kind of comparing one versus the other? I think it's better at this point to kind of maybe look at them more as a tandem. And do we really think the center forwards were the issue today?
Well, I've seen a lot of talk about that point, saying, Barry came on, we scored a goal in the second half, and therefore Barry was kind of the difference maker. But I think Barry was more so the beneficiary of the tweaks that Moyes made in the midfield, like you talked about. Dewsbury Hall being a little bit more disciplined, not running around like crazy. And yes, you called it out, Ryan. I mean, Barry unquestionably took care of the ball better, was moving it on the ground a little bit better. Beto had a couple clumsy touches, but he was also completely on an island in the first half. He didn't have much he could do. I do find it a little odd, this sort of like adversary. People are trying to like pit them against one another. It's like they're both Everton players. We want them both to succeed. We have now the benefit of Beto did not have a great first half. He gets pulled, and Barry has a decent second half. He contributes, but I don't think Barry came on and had this like unbelievable performance or anything like that. We talked about sort of didn't really get involved in any major chances. Looked completely physically outmatched for the most part against their center halves, which you would expect. And when Everton aren't looking to sort of break the lines and play in behind, the pace of Barry is kind of not really utilized that well. So I don't know. I mean, I've said it. I'll continue to say it. I think it's going to be a back and forth. I think Barry probably may have inched a nose ahead and may get the look probably against Wolves, I would think for sure, and then maybe next weekend as well at West Ham. But it's going to be back and forth the entire season.
Context is also important, right? Because we were just poor as a whole the first half, right? So you switch roles and Barry has to play the first half, Beto the second. Does that make a difference? And so I think, but like as you both mentioned, it's a bit obsessive in regards to, I just think that they want a striker, Everton fans, of course, that will consistently score goals. And right now we're just not at a place where we have that, right? And I think every match will always be different. And I think their strengths today were pretty highlighted in regards to Thierno Barry. I think did a good job of link-up play as well as just his role, what he played. But he's not going to win balls against Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate. It's just not going to happen. But I agree with you, James. I think it's a good and I think the one thing that we have to mention, it's healthy competition, right? So it's not a negative thing in regards to one guy playing better than the other. I want both guys to drive each other's performance. So if Thierno Barry gets their start on Tuesday, I hope he plays well. Versus Beto, I hope he plays well. It's okay. So going into the second point, Ghana leading the game in shots, tied for second on the team in touches of the box. Great goal, but I think the usage is a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah, I put this one on here. I was really kind of perplexed why Ghana was pushed up so high and so involved in the attack when Everton have all these other really actually very capable attacking players that we're not utilizing. We just hit on Ndiaye a few moments ago. I get that he's sort of appearing at the top of the box to offer an outlet to Grealish on the left, but I just think you're going to attack. If you look at this Everton team, Ghana's not the guy you want leading the team in shots and involved around the box as much as almost any other forward player.
What else are you going to do, though? I mean, Moyes does not look at Ghana as like the 6, playing with an 8 and a 2. He just doesn't look at him that way. He pushes him up just as much as Garner. He views them clearly as equals. And you're right. It's not necessarily the best threat at the top of the 18. My criticism would be, fine, Jack gets the ball wide. He's got all day out there. He waits for the double team to come over. Dewsbury Hall likes making these near post runs to take that space, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. If you can play him forward like you did once, get him on his left foot, bad angle, go up high, you could score. He's already scored once like that. But then what? You have a left back that's not going to go forward, and I don't want him going forward because his timing and his decision-making and making those runs is awful. So if you're not going to tuck Jack into the half space and bring out a wide left back, someone's got to go over there and support him. Should it be Ghana? Should it be Garner? I don't know. But I think it's a byproduct of the overall flaws and fundamental restrictions of the side. I don't know what to say about it. It's and I'm not going to blame Ghana for it. I know you're not saying that, obviously. Neither of you are saying that. But to me, I don't know what the other option would be. Ideally, I would rather have Jack in the half space and Dewsbury Hall supporting him so Jack could be a little bit more of a goal threat. But the only way that happens is if he has someone wide to him that can split off that double team so that the right back has to go with the player wide and creates it. Then someone else maybe has to double Jack. But it wasn't happening. I mean, it maybe happened one time the whole match where Mikalenko made a run wide left and allowed Jack to cut inside and threaten the goal. I'd like to see that. Otherwise, play Jack in the middle and put Ndiaye over there. Ndiaye at least will go right through guys and be a direct, and may lose the ball a little bit, but then fine. Ghana's there to sweep it up. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like we're not quite getting enough out of that double team. And someone goes to double team a winger, that's a good matchup. You want that. That's two guys over there, and it's a chance for us to set up in the final third. So Moyes still got some kinks he got to work out there. Maybe there's some limitations of personnel, but I think we got to do a little better with that circumstance.
Agreed. Next up, talking about something we alluded to earlier, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall not subbed again. We talked about it last pod. Ryan, you mentioned maybe it's partially for set pieces, but as we talked about last time, he just can't be immune to getting pulled off if it's warranted. There's too much flexibility off the bench from an attacking perspective to not put guys in positions to be successful. And Dewsbury Hall, especially by the time we made the subs, was on a yellow card, a ridiculous yellow card, but a yellow card nevertheless. Maybe take something away from the physical side off the ball in the game. And he had four dispossessions in the first half, got out-muscled several times. Don't think he was really all that great. I think he had 2 key passes. But you take off Ndiaye, who's dribbling up a storm on the right-hand side, instead of Dewsbury Hall there, it just is very odd. Like, move Ndiaye in another position, put Dibbling in, take Dewsbury Hall off. Like, that seems like such a layup to me.
The other thing is, too, it allows you to play deeper and run and attack more on the counter. I just think if you're going to have Dewsbury Hall up higher pressing in a disjointed fashion, I'd rather have Ndiaye up there. Doesn't make any sense to me. And you spend all this money on Dibbling, and maybe this wasn't the time and place to play him, but Dibbling's a good player. You can't have this guy be immune to subs. Now, again, in a team that's not very good, maybe, and we're on the ball a little bit more, dropping him back deeper and putting Ndiaye in there, fine. But then you got Charlie back there, too. I just still find flaw in this entire issue where you've got that many players in 2 positions, basically, and you don't have a right back or a 6. And it's frustrating to me. It's an unbalanced squad in many ways. But regardless, I still don't understand the justification for not sticking Ndiaye at least in the middle, or, dare I say, playing Ndiaye at center forward. We're not getting enough from him on the right side. People are going to say, well, he has an assist. He had 2 tap-in goals. And he's carrying the right side, and maybe Dibbling wouldn't do any better. And it's probably the best for the team having him over there, but it's not the best for him.
Yeah, and I think also, too, with Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, like, I don't think his pressing ability is something, as you've mentioned, like, that we should really be utilizing, because it's not something that he's going to get to guys faster than an Ndiaye, or even somebody like, dare I say, Tim Urbunam, right? So it's just like one of those things where, for me, it's a real kind of negative with Moyes right now, because first off, I think he's played more minutes this season than he's played all of Chelsea last year, right? So I think when you think of the regular season. But also, too, he's just so inflexible in regards to having to play around him. So the only 2 positions you can put him in is essentially the 10 or the 8, right? Where, we have to sacrifice something. And I think, as you mentioned, James, we have a bench now. Right? If this was last season, I could understand it a little bit more, whereas, you look at the numbers on the bench, there's not really much. But even with Merlin being out today, right, like, there are guys out there that you can put that I think would at least just change the dimension of the game, right? So it is a short sample size. I know we're only 5 games in, but it is kind of one of those things where I don't want this to be a continued talking point where we have to just continue to analyze Kieran Dewsbury-Hall essentially playing every single minute of every single game. He's not James Tarkowski, right, in that regard.
And I just don't buy this. It's the set piece thing either. I mean, if you put Asnu in, maybe he can take them off the left foot. But who cares? Have a right footer take it. It's okay. It's not the biggest deal in the world to me. And I think also he was on the yellow card too at that point too. I think that's not what you want from that guy. He's already lacking size and pace. He struggles to win battles. The one thing about him is that you kind of got to wonder is he's never really been that final third guy in the Premier League. He was that way in the Championship. And you kind of want him to be this James Maddison type a little bit. That's someone who he gets compared to a little bit, I think. And I don't know if he's quite that. But yeah, he can't be immune to subbing. There are too many options too. And I think the subs came way, way too late. I'll say just in general, too, just the subs. PDX Toffee has a good point here, but after the Gana goal, not a single XG chance of over 0.04 on either side. Everton only mustered 2 shots, not a single one on target. Moyes did not start the game with a good setup, and I don't think he impacted the game with his adjustments later. You could point to the Gana goal as being some miraculous play, but it was really just a big moment and a very high-quality chance. It wasn't a byproduct to me of anything that was happening with the level of consistency. Give him credit, Moyes, for the changes at halftime, though. I mean, tactically, the setup made it a more even match, but the subs did not do much to get us over the hump, and did they just come too late?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are saying, including PDX Toffee, who said he would have loved those subs 15 minutes earlier. I think we've already said as much here. Like, yeah, you need to give Charlie and Dibbling. We didn't see very much from either of them because they just did not have time to get involved in the game at all. And these are guys who Alcaraz wasn't that expensive, but a guy who we've seen impact games late with his ability to drive the ball forward, to shoot from distance, to just disrupt things. And we know what Dibbling's capable of, and we spent a lot of money on him. So
is Charlie any less of an 8 than Dewsbury-Hall is if you've got to drop him back? I don't think there's a whole lot difference there. I mean, maybe you could argue he's a slightly more of an attacking player. But the goal wasn't to get on the ball and control the game. The goal was to attack, and Charlie is one that plays direct and can threaten a goal directly with his right foot.
I think that's right, and I think the way in which we approach the final stages, I get not wanting to give up the third. That is the threat that you're always trying to balance against. But I also think if this game ends 3-1, okay, so what? Who cares? At least we threw everything at them and pushed for the win. I just think it was a little bit too conservative for Moyes in a place that he's never won, that Everton have been so poor at. It's just right
subbing
there.
Subbing off Ndiaye? Like, oh man! Did you see anything in his play that merited subbing off?
No, he was so effective, and if you could just have gotten him the ball actually in the final third to take guys on, again, it adds a whole new dimension to the attack, our ability to break them down and get that equalizer. So that was definitely a frustrating point, but. Regardless, to your earlier comments, Ryan, I mean, after the Gana goal, Liverpool had 60% of the ball. We only had 2 shots. Really wasn't much to write home about in terms of pushing for that equalizer. So disappointing that we get that sort of momentum. The away fans were loud. They were up for it. They were looking forward to it. And then by the time stoppage time hits, the Liverpool fans just kind of get to enjoy it and gloat a little bit and just not the way you wanted things to wrap up.
So I want to take a quick moment to express my love for the commentators. Pre has his comment on the Discord. That's a tongue twister. I don't think I could say that again. I probably said it wrong the first time. Nothing new there for mispronunciations. But his last comment, it was also crazy that we got a Keane at striker mention during the broadcast. Holy moly, were the broadcasters so bad. I switched it over to Universario because Andres Cantor was on the call and is just considerably more interesting, better, even if my Spanish isn't the greatest. It just is so insulting sometimes, man, when you listen to this stuff, especially the Liverpool stuff. Thoughts on...
They're impossible. Before you get onto it, I just want to say, yes, it is insufferable. If you're watching them play different opposition, it's insufferable to watch a Liverpool broadcast. I try to avoid it if I at all can. But there was another comment very early on talking about how it looked like the Burnley match from last week when they just sat behind the ball. And again, just
ridiculous.
It wasn't like that at all. Just shows the shallowness of the analysis.
I wish it was more like that, actually.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead. The last point we had from Florida Biff, we talked about this match prior to being Everton's first real test. We've played some teams who are frankly not very good or just not in great form. Liverpool are maybe not in great form for them, but they're undefeated in the league and certainly have won all of their games, so kind of hard to dispute that. Florida Biff's comment, it's woefully clear we are lacking elite talent. My goodness, we were battling relegation for years, sure. The committee can't construct a champion in one window, though a couple right-back wingers sure would have been nice. I think that, to put it in perspective, this was our first real test. We went to Anfield. We've had some blowouts there over the years. We gave them a relatively close game. They scored on 2 well-taken but poorly defended chances. I do still think this is kind of signs of progress for Everton in some ways. I still think there's flaws to this team, but compared to recent past, it could have been a lot worse for Everton today.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give David Moyes credit at halftime, right? Making the subs, as Ryan said. But I also think, too, in this kind of group of players, right, there is, I think, more effectiveness you can get out of. I wouldn't, disagree fully with the lacking elite talent, but I do think we are starting to have elite talent on our team in regards to Iliman Ndiaye, Jack Grealish. There are guys on our team that I think, and even at the back, right, when Jared comes back, and Pickford, of course, he didn't have his greatest day, right, but he's up there, right. So I think I would disagree a little bit in regards to that piece, but I understand the premise. I agree in regards to progress, right. To lose 2-1, I don't want to kind of, put the white flag and say it's a moral victory. We did some good things in the second half, but I think as Ryan has mentioned, right, the flaws of not having a 6, just kind of having 2 slower center backs at the moment, right? Of course, that changes if Jake and Jared were partnered, right? There are flaws, right, that a better team like Liverpool will take advantage of. So for us, I think they get hidden when we play, I think, normal opposition. But on a day like today, right, we got punished. And credit to Liverpool for taking their 2 chances well.
Yeah, no one's expecting him to construct a champion in one window. Of course, that's absurd. But I think it's fair to say that you should have addressed your needs. This idea that you can't do that in one window, to me, is absolute utter nonsense. What are you talking about? You can certainly address 2 out of your 3 major needs of the team. And it's left us hamstrung and difficult in some circumstances. But I think the bigger critique to me today is that you didn't necessarily get the most out of the talent you had. I don't understand why Dewsbury Hall sits on the pitch the whole time, even though he's on a yellow, not playing well. I don't understand why the subs don't come in earlier. It's actually fine that he wants to shut Dwight McNeil out of the team, but like your point, James, is, I don't care if we lose 3-1. Put him on at left back if you need a left foot on so badly. Don't put Garner back there. And I know you say that Moyes has said that Garner's played as well as any English player, some utter absurdity that he should be on the England team. Fine, whatever. I'm glad he's playing better. But putting him at left back suddenly gives us some goal threat. I mean, I don't understand the logic there whatsoever. And I just can't believe he took Ndiaye off. Like, what are you talking about, man? Why on earth would you do that? Jake O'Brien, too. I mean, is he on for set pieces? I'm not saying that Nathan Patterson's a world beater, but I just think you didn't make enough of an attempt to win the game or get back in the game. And to make those changes, which were minimal effect offensively, while you left the second half just kind of get away, I think was really disappointing. I mean, you can't sit there and just hope for a moment of magic like Ghana had. I just don't think that's very realistic. I don't think David Moyes had his best match today, but it's a good Liverpool side, and I don't think there's plenty of optimism still to be had for the rest of the season, but I do think this is one that maybe was an opportunity that got away from us a little bit.
Into our upcoming schedule, and of course, we get to play at Wolverhampton Wanderers again for the Carabao Cup. A really impressive result for them today, losing 3-1 to Leeds, tripling their open goal count for Leeds. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin scored, so good for him. And then, of course, the game that we actually will preview is going to be at home against West Ham, back into the Premier League. We also play Palace after that at Man City, so Jack will not play that game. So it'll be interesting to see how we line up against them. and then at home versus Spurs. So actually outside of the Wolves match, starting to get a few games at Hill Dickinson. But we will preview not the Wolves match, but the West Ham game. And so for West Ham, not enjoying a good start to the Premier League season. They did lose again to Palace today at home. No, there's a lot of chatter with Graham Potter potentially being replaced. A few different options: Nuno, Slaven Bilic, just some interesting names. And then of course, the Messiah.
I mean, they need to change the story.
Yeah, they need to change the story
to West Ham.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're cooked.
Yeah. So, guys, if you thought our midfield was slow, welcome to West Ham because they've taken to it another level. Of course, they have brought in reinforcements, so they did address their need in the window. Of course, Manuel Fernandes and Magasa. Magasa really hasn't played much yet, so it's interesting that they're going to kind of transition him in. It doesn't make any sense that we make fun of David Moyes for loving Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, but I am so glad that he does not love Kieran Dewsbury-Hall as much as Graham Potter loves James Ward-Prowse. That guy is still playing.
Moyes loved him too. What are you talking about?
Well,
if he was here, he'd play him just like the same way he played Souček. Thank God Souček's on a red card.
Let me rephrase though. James Ward-Prowse was also 2 years younger, right? So he was slow before, but he's molasses now. And so Graham Potter, of course, fighting for his job. It's going to be too early to tell right now, of course, what they decide to do. They have looked a little bit better since moving from the back five to that four. El Hadj Diouf is somebody to look out for. Really good left back signing, in my opinion, that they've done. But they are just a very odd squad right now. Of course, Jared Bowen is going to be somebody to watch out for. He's still a very, very good player. Nicholas Fulkrug is hurt, so it looks like Callum Wilson, of course, will get the nod, who we all just love on Merseyside, just for all the moments that he's given us the last few seasons. But this is a game that I think we should absolutely win, get us back on the good vibe train. Of course, we have the game at Wolves, but that will kind of take us into the end of the pod. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Be very interesting to see what the lineup. Well, it would be very interesting to see the lineup we put out against Wolves. I wish I had more to say about this match, guys, but to be perfectly honest, it was just kind of meh. I wasn't expecting a whole lot going into it. I still don't think Liverpool are some absolute juggernaut or anything. And I feel like it's disappointing that we didn't give it more of a go, but it wasn't a very exciting match. I don't know what to say. I feel bad for the people on the West Coast and for the people in Colorado.
Yeah, it just felt a very anticlimactic derby overall. Like, there wasn't anything controversial. There wasn't any James Tarkowski and Van Dijk shoving each other and off set pieces in the first half was the extent of the animosity. It felt honestly a little bit sanitized from what you want from a derby, where we want the blood and thunder.
Well, it's just disappointing.
We just did not get that.
It's just disappointing.
No injuries or red cards, though. So I'll take that.
True.
I will take that.
We had Mikalenko come back and play 85 minutes and stay healthy, so that's
right.
good. And we have the worst fixture of our entire season out of the way now. Honestly, this one is one that I just dread every single year. We get to have them at Hill Dickinson later on this season, which is typically a much more favorable matchup for us at home, so look forward to that. Shan mentioned the West Ham match. We have the Wolves match. Unsure of the content this week. We do have potentially personal conflicts. Shan, it's his last week as an unmarried man. He will be getting married next weekend, so congratulations, and let him know, send him your support as he goes into a big wedding weekend. It should be an exciting one, and we're obviously very happy for him. So congratulations, buddy. Early congratulations. But I think that's going to do it for us, unless you guys have any final words.
IP for the best hitter there ever has been in the game.
Well said. And with that, it's going to do it for us on this episode of The Blue Frontier. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoy the show, again, please leave us a rating and review. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Helps us out a ton. Been seeing some new reviews come in, which we very much appreciate. Follow us on socials. Check out the merch shop if you want to support the show, help us grow. That would be much appreciated, and the merch should come through looking pretty good. We've bought some samples. We'll be merching up. We're going to be fully decked out in all Blue Frontier swag before too long. But again, thanks, everyone. Join the Discord. Until next time, up the Toffees.